Ah, good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Trumais, Perek Yud Aleph Halacha Beis. We are learning today Daf Kuf. So now we are already in the 3 digits. We are heading towards the end of the Masechta. We are starting on Daf Kuf Amud Aleph at the end of the second line from the top of the Amid, and we are going to refer back to the second machloikis we had in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer holds that fruit juices are classified as beverages. They're classified as a mashke with regard to the laws of Tumah. Everyone holds that only the 7 liquids are able to be machshir, are able to make other foods susceptible to becoming tamei. No one debates that. The topic of our Mishnah is whether other liquids are able to both acquire Tumah and impart Tumah. And interestingly, Rabbi Yeshua holds that only the 7 liquids are classified as beverages, b'negei dinei tumah altogether. It's amazing. That means the apple juice cannot become tamei, cannot impart tumah, aside of it not being able to be machshir anything else. And the way our Mishnah records that Rabbi Eliezer, he holds that no. He holds that all other beverages, all liquids, are classified as mashkin, concerning the dinim of Tumah, even though what can be machshir foods, only the 7 liquids. Now, as we had yesterday, a braisa that recorded a machloikes tanoim bishitas Rabbi Eliezer in the reisha of the Mishnah, right? That we had the Rab Nosson, the Tana Rab Nosson says, Rabbi Eliezer doesn't hold that the juices are equal to fruits. No, only marasayin. I'm not going to go back to what we learned yesterday. A whole different understanding we're going to learn today. Amazing. Another braisa, the same Rab Nosson, argues with the way Rabbeinu HaKadosh understands Rabbi Eliezer. That means he has a whole different understanding of Rabbi Eliezer. According to him, no one holds that any other than the 7 liquids are included in the dinim of Tumah. They're not. They do not classify as a mashke. So he has a new understanding of the machlekes in the Mishnah. What happens if a little bit of water falls into another juice? Whether the water becomes batal b'roiv, and now this juice cannot become tamei, cannot be machshir, or that will be the chumrah l'Rab Nosson, l'Rabbi Eliezer, that since there is from the 7 liquids, even in the small amount, in any other of the liquids, they don't become nullified. They retain their independent classification as a mashkin. And therefore, that entirety of liquids will be machshir foods. It will acquire tumah, will impart tumah, because of the little bit of water that's in it. Okay, that's going to be the first topic of today, which will be relatively, I would say, usual. We're not changing the whole signon. But the second part of today's daf is a daf out of kachim. The Gemara is going to go back to the way we understand Shitas Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. In other words, there's a bigger machloikis, whether all other liquids other than the 7, whether they are b'chlal classified as mashkin or not, concerning any part of Tumah. Can they acquire Tumah? Can they impart Tumah? What is underlying that machloikis here won't be anything to do with svara. It's going to have to do with the way we expound the Yud Gimel Midas. Now, I want to say a couple of things about the Yud Gimel Midos. I think many of us, hopefully most of us, remember that, we say every morning Rabbi Shmuel Omer, but in the other side is Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva has different, same but different. Instead of wording it klal uprat or klal uprat or klal, he has ribui miut ribui. I'm not going to go into that right now. So we know already, we are familiar with other types of rules. What we're going to learn today, I don't remember ever learning together. First of all, when we say that Rabbi Yishmael Omer, some of the statements that we make are very unelaborated. It's almost like a Mishnah, not like a Braisa. As an example, when we learn in the Braisa, pratu klalu prat. So we say I atodan elkeina prat. In other words, we're telling you the scenario that whenever the Torah writes something in a more generalized way, then the Torah specifies, then the Torah writes it in a general way. And the question is the klal the ikir, is the prat the ikir? So we say in the Braisa, no, Rabbi Shmuel says, I atadon elikeina prat. Very nice. Now take a couple of steps back. When the Braisa says prat u klal, what do you do with that? The Braisa doesn't say. You can open up a siddur. It just says there is a rule about klal uprat and about prat uklal. But what is the rule? The Braisa doesn't say. We're going to say. The Gemara will say over here. And the rule is prat uklal hakoil bechlal. I'll say now in the intro what this means. This is very important. I'm going to give you an example. In the parshas, in the portion of Mishpatim, when the Torah is speaking about the din of an unpaid watchman. So the Torah says that ki yiten ish l'reyehu, and the Torah begins by giving specific examples, chamoir, oishoir, oiseh. Then the Torah says, v'chol behema. Now, you can argue the Torah could have said, ki yiten ish l'reyehu, any animal. Good. The Torah doesn't do it that way. The Torah gives a couple of specified examples, and then the Torah says a general and all animals. The rule is hakoil bechlal, which means that why did God give the prat? We have to figure out every case on its case. But all of the dinim of the unpaid watchmen apply to all animals. They don't apply uniquely to the chamoir or to the shoyer or to the seh. In other words, the rule of Rabbi Shmuel of prat uklal is hakoil bechlal. Everything follows the klal, not the prat. Like, I know we don't say this in the Brais. That's number one. Number two, again, in our Braisa, in Midah 6, if you count the Midahs, the way our version is, klal uprat uklal, I atadon elke ein prat. Because if you have a klal and a prat and a klal, the prat is very, very significant. It limits the klal. What happens if it's the opposite, which will be our Gemara? Prat, klal, uprat. That's going to be today's daf. Not klal, prat, uklal that we are used to. Something unusual. Prat, klal, uprat, and the rule of Rabbi Yishmael will be also the same. I atadon elke ein prat. And as we will see concerning in Parsha Shemini, when the Torah speaks about mashkin that are being machshir, and included in that is the topic whether mashkin b'chlal could become tamei and partuma. According to everyone, there is a prat and there is a klal. But then there is another statement. If that other statement is to be understood as a prat, which will be Shitas Rabbi Yeshua, so then we're going to have a prat, klalu prat. Then we're going to say, I atodona eleke eina prat. And the prat is only the 7 liquids and nothing beyond that. As the Gemara will explain, that according to our version, Beshitas Rabbi Eliezer, the final prat is coming to teach you something altogether different, as we'll see. So all you have is the prat and klal. When you have a prat or klal, then the rule is hakoil b'chlal. You include everything. You don't limit the dinim of tuma only to the 7 liquids. Now, just to make it clear, to be machsher other foods, no one holds that apple juice can be machsher other foods. That's vadai. Only the 7 liquids as they are remembered through the mnemonic of Yad Shach Adam, as we already spoke out yesterday. I want to add one good vart that I heard from Rabbi Rosner, just that the 7 liquids are connected to the 7 Yavim Tovim. And what are they? So Pesach is connected to blood because the miracle happened through the dam that we put on the mezuzahs, and because of the first carbon that we bring as Jews is the carbon Pesach, and the dam. Anyways, Pesach is connected to blood. Shavuos is connected to, what do you think, Aviv? To milk. To milk. Sukkot is connected to water. Nisuch hamayim. Purim is connected to wine. Really works. Chanukah is connected to oil. Rosh Hashanah is connected to honey. Just happens to be that I know the honey we have on Rosh Hashanah is the vash of bees. The vash of the 7 liquids that we are talking about is from dates. Actually, I take that back. I think from the 7 mashkin, I don't know if it's from dates. Okay?
Yeah, tomorrow.
From dates?
Yeah.
Not from honey? The 7 liquids that are being
the
mashed.
Honey is made out of dates, yeah, but the 7 liquids.
Maybe you're confusing the Shivas Haminim. Anyways, I just escaped my mind right now. But be that as it may, we know that honey is connected to Rosh Hashanah. The one that is a little bit of a stretch is that tal is connected to Yom Kippur. Now, that we'll leave for later. We don't have time, but I had a few ideas about that. Another way of remembering, every Yom Tov is connected to another liquid. Okay, Chavir, this is enough of the intro. Let's hit it inside. So,
Rabbi, it's bees honey. It's not date honey. It's bees honey.
I got it.
Yeah, it is.
Very,
According to
so it's
ChatGPT,
correct.
it's tomorrow.
No. The Gabe is saying good. That the liquid that is machsher is bees honey. Our sugya speaking about dates honey, fakert. That's the whole Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah gave an example that it's dates honey. Dates honey is not from the 7 liquids. Our Mishnah taught us that. Yakir, our Mishnah, that the first machlekes that we learned yesterday, the examples that the Mishnah gave, right, the apple cider, what was the other example was dvash tamanim. And the whole machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua is because dvash tamanim is not one of the 7 liquids. The 7 liquids is bees honey. Okay, so I want to go on the second machlekes. So it's simple. Are any liquids other than the 7 liquids, the way we have the version, are they called mashke? Mashke means, are they called the beverage? Regarding the laws of Tuma. Could they acquire Tuma? Not everything acquires Tuma. Oichlin is mekabel Tuma. Okay? And once it's Tameh, it could impart Tuma. It has to have a size of a kibetza. These are just details, but it acquires and imparts. The 7 liquids, vadai, not only are they machshir foods, but they acquire and they impart. What about other liquids? Machlekes in our Mishnah. That's the way we have it. Says the Gemara Tani, we learned in a Braisa that Rab Nosson, the Tana Rab Nosson has a whole different understanding in the Machlekes. And according to Rab Nosson, very similar to Rab Nosson of yesterday, similar. He will say, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, they both are of the same opinion that all other mashkin are not mekabel tuma. Vadai not. So what is Rabbi Eliezer saying? That loy should Rabbi Eliezer mitame mishum mashke. He agrees with Rabbi Yeshua. Only 7 liquids. All of the 3 laws. To be machsher, acquire, and impart. Other mashkin don't do any of them. But where's Rabbi Eliezer more machmed? Al shenafal letoichay mashke. If any one of the 7 liquids, just as an example, as water, but it doesn't only mean water. What happens if water falls into apple juice, orange juice, date, honey, apple cider? Now, normally the rule will be bittul b'roif. Don't forget, there's no issue, there's no isur to be concerned with a tam, right? Tam ke'ikir, if the ikir is a problem in kashrus, everything is kosher here. So here it is, and so Rabbi Yeshua will apply the normal rule. You go after the majority. If the majority of the liquid is apple juice, so then the water is nullified. Here is where Rabbi Eliezer is machman. Rabbi Eliezer mitame mishum mashke. Rabbi Eliezer will hold that for some reason the 7 liquids do not lose their identity. So all of it now will acquire tuma, not because of the apple juice shaboy, because of the mayim shaboy, because of the yayin shaboy. The chachamim oimrim, and by the way, the chachamim is what we will call Rabbi Yeshua. They follow the rule of hoichan achar haroiv. Very good. Now says the Gemara, al dat.
However much you want, like any volume of the 7 liquid.
Which is amazing. In other words, that's a big chumrah. So if I have a gallon of apple juice and I have 1 drop of water that fell in here, since there is water in here, the apple juice that we buy has so much water. Everything here is fake. So vadai, it's water and sugar and poison and something that looks like an apple. There's nothing to do with an apple. But if there's water, the water never loses its identity. So now, if any of it falls on other foods, the foods became muksher. Why? Because some water fell on the food. The water in the apple juice.
The Bruch thing, and there was remember he said like the cream cheese is no water, and then Rabbi Nathan said there is some water.
The Gabe is saying good. That's the whole issue of Gebrach. So we don't put cream cheese on matzah because there might be some water in it. And the water is not nullified in the cream cheese, and that water is going to make your matzah chametz stick. So burn the house down. There you go. That's the minhag. So al date de Rab Nosson. So now, according to Rab Nosson, this topic itself is not only discussed li Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rab Nosson, both Rab Meir and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and our Rabbi Lazar, all of them are going to be saying exactly the same thing. So we already know our Rabbi Eliezer, li Rab Nosson. right? It's not that the mashkin themselves. He doesn't say that liquids can become tamei. He's saying that the 7 liquids that fall into other liquids never become nullified. Where do we find this in Avmeir? Avmeir du amar ein mei peiros. Again, different versions. Mevatlin lo'olam. So what are we talking about? Look inside the Pnei Moshe. Guys, everyone says another pshat. We're going to go with the Pnei Moshe. Is the end of the narrow lines. You see the end of the narrow lines? Rab Meir du amar b'toisefta. First of all, it's Rab Meir, not in a Mishnah. It's in a Tosefta in Machzir. The ein mei peiros, and here, according to the Pnei Moshe, the gersa is b'telim lo'olam, meaning, he'll explain, the Tanin and Sham. Mei peiros. Shenaflu letoichan mayin kol shehein. You hear that, Aviv? One drop of water fell into a huge vat of any other liquids. Tameim, divrei Rav Meir. Tameim means that if something tamei touches it, it all becomes tamei. If the water was already tamei, it all remains tamei, because liquids get all mixed one with the other. And if there is no nullification, which is Shitas Rabbi Meir, so everything becomes Tamei. Clear, same thing. And the final, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, here we are quoting a Mishnah in Machshid. And what states in the Mishnah? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Tzir Tohor. Back to the fish brine, a lot of fish brine. If we have fish brine, that, as far as we are concerned, is still pure. Shenafal l'toichai mayim kol shuhu. Wow. So first of all, as a rule, that water, rabbinically, very much like our hands, that rabbinically are automatically sheni letuma, water is tamei. I'm not talking about water nowadays. I'm talking about water in those days. You didn't have plumbing. So the water that was available in the homes, they were stored in a barrel, in a bucket, and it was common that people needed to use those waters. They would stick their hands in it. We already know all of the dinim. I'm speaking on a rabbinic level. My hands are a sheni, first of all. Now, I know that a sheni can only make, normally, if anything, it's going to make something into a shlishi. I know that. And that's only shaykh to truma or kachim, but not the liquids. Because the rule of liquids is that even if sheni has contact with the liquid will become a rishon. It goes back to becoming a tchila. So in other words, just a rule, stam waters, unless they were supervised, have a rabbinic status of tuma. And therefore, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, if you have fish brine, some of them needed to have water mixed in it. If even a drop of water fell into all of the fish brine is tummy. Now, why would that be? Let's go, the water is tummy. So what? Why would it not be that if there is a majority of water versus the fish brine, I get it. But l'chayra, if the roiv is brine and minority water, normally we apply the din of batel beroiv. Fact that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov doesn't say that, he doesn't give any shiurim, which means even the most minute amount of water will render all of the tzir into tzir that's now tamei. That means someone who's trying to eat their chulin al tahara cannot eat it, won't eat it. Again, that is because he follows this same rule that liquids are not nullified in other liquids. And that's the meaning of Rabbi and Rabbi Eliezer, the way Rab Nosson understands it. Okay, Atkan, Rab Nosson's understanding of Rabbi Eliezer. We don't accept that version. We understand Rabbi Eliezer to be saying something much more than Rab Nosson, Rabbi Eliezer, which is that even though Bein Rabbi Eliezer, Bein Rabbi Yeshua, only the 7 liquids can render foods susceptible, can render foods mukhshar l'kabel tumah. Other foods, solids, then, after they are harvested, prior to them becoming wetted with the knowledge, with the satisfaction of the owner, with any of those 7 liquids, if that did not happen, even if mamish tuma, the highest tuma, had contact, their food will not become tummy. That's the din of something foods needing to first, they have to become mukhshar, lekabel tuma, for them to be able to become tummy. That din is one din. Only the 7 liquids. However, what about, could other liquids acquire tuma? That's the machlokes according to our version, Rabbi Yeshua. Now we know it's also the Chachamim say no. Say that only the 7 liquids could become tamei, b'chlal. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yeshua and the Chachamim, liquids can never make other things tamei. liquids, meaning other than the 7 liquids. All the other mashkin won't do anything. They can never become tamei. They can never be machsher. They can never be metame. And the Rabbi Eliezer is the machmer. He says the din of muchsher lekabel tuma is one set of laws. There we limit it to the 7 liquids. As far as could any liquid become tamei, like food, yes. What's the machlekes? And this machlekes has to do, like we mentioned in the Hagdama, with the application. Everyone in our Gemara will agree to the rule of prat uklal hakoil bechlal. Everyone will agree that, listen to these words, you never heard these words, prat, klal, uprat. It's not what we say in the Rabbi Yishmael Leimer. Everyone will agree that the rule will be like the 6 midah, that I atodon eleke eina prat. So what's the machlokes? So let's begin, before we read the Gemara inside, everyone who has a Torah Oir HaShalem, it's good always to read the Psukim inside. If you have a Chumash, you can take out Parsha Shmini, right? That's Perek Yudal of Pasuk Lamed Dalet. Yeah, just to know, the Torah there, just a context. We're speaking about the Shemona Shiratzim. That's another side thing you need to know, that, what is the source of Tumah? When it comes to animals, all dead animals, all in part Tumah. Now, you have to know how much. Kazayis, how does it impart, right? Not Tumas oil is only by an Adam, according to the Rashbi, only by a Jew. But however you are to define halachic contact, all right, a dead carcass imparts Tumah. But there's a big exception. Any creature that's classified as a sheretz or a remes, with the exclusion of the Shmoyne Shiratzim, they do not impart Tumah even when they're dead, which thank God for that, because it will be even harder to remain pure. So when you have a dead cockroach, if you have a dead mosquito, normally you would say, oh, it's dead. Doesn't impart Tumah. But the Torah there in Parsha Shmini says there are Shmoyne Shiratzim, and this can only be explained al pi Kabbalah. The why is never explained al pi Nigla. But those Shmoyne Shiratzim, when they're dead, then they do impart Tumah. And by the way, there's different shiurim. You don't need a kazayis. It can be kadasha, whatever those pratim are. In that the Torah then is speaking about one of the Shmoyne Shiratzim that fell into a klei cheres. There's so many consequences. Whoever learns chitas, it's a hard days in chitas. You have to remember the din that klei cheres only acquires tumah from the inside. You have to know the din that klei cheres can never be purified. There's no way of purifying it. Only shivirasan zeu takonasan. But in that context, we're also speaking about foods that were inside the klei cheres or liquids. And I'm going to read a pasuk. Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'achel. And by the way, these words are a little bit superfluous. It could have said mikol ha'oichel asher yavei olav mayim. So even if a dead sheretz that imparts tumah falls on a food, the rule of solid foods is aviv. If those foods were not prior to their contact with the source of tumah, if they did not become wet with any of the 7 liquids, the Torah uses the words mayim as the example for the 7 liquids, it will not become tamei. Crazy. You have a dead sheretz, it's going to make the keli tamei. We'll speak about the liquids. Food has unique. Food needs another step prior to it becoming tumah. So that's what the Torah is saying, that if there's food in there, but what type of food? Only food that's edible, that's excluding something. And another detail, if it's a food that prior to the issue of the dead, any of the Shmoyne Shiratzim falling in it or near it, inside the same klei cheres, if it did not become wet with water, it also will not become tamei. But what happened is asher yavei olav mayim. So what happens, says the Torah, now yitma. What is yitma? The food becomes tamei. Now what happens if there was liquid in this keli? So the Torah says, here we go. V'chol mashke asher yishasa. And also, if there'll be any liquid that's drinkable, b'chol keli yitma, from the dead, one of the Shmoyne Shiratzim. That's the pasuk. Now I want you to look at whoever's looking in the Chumash or in the Torah Oir HaShalem. I know that you have to know how to learn the Torah Shabbat Peh over here. I know that the words mayim are written in the pshat. We're speaking about the foods that needed to become muchsher. I know that. But nevertheless, in this one pasuk, the Torah makes mention of mayim, prat. Then the Torah says, v'chol mashke. V'chol mashke is a general, any liquid. But then the Torah says, asher yishasa. Asher yishasa is limiting. This should be a prat klal, uprat. You have to become accustomed to this. You have to just be makabel this. The reason why some people have a harder time is because when they understand what the pasuk is saying, they're saying, no, it's not a prat to klal. The prat is about the oichel becoming muksher. It's almost like it's two different psukim. It's two different scenarios. But we don't learn it that way. The fact that in one pasuk, the Torah makes a mention of mayim, then the Torah makes a mention of v'chol mashke, prat uklal, and l'chu'ura, asher yishasa is limiting only liquids that could be drunk. That's a prat. It's not all of the liquids. If it's going to be a prat, klal uprat, I atadon eleke ein haprat. What prat is mentioned explicitly? No. Prat, klal, uprat, these are new klalim. I atadon eleke ein haprat. What prat is actually mentioned? Mayim. No one is going to say that it's only mayim. No, it's amazing. Mayim vadai has in it the 7 liquids. But then we would apply, like the Torah is speaking about asheretz that touched liquids. If you're going to learn prat, klal, uprat, you're going to say what acquires tuma from a sheretz, from an avela, from a mace, doesn't matter. Only the 7 liquids. If you're going to say that the words asher yishasa are so needed for something else that they don't form the klal, the prat, klal, uprat, it's what you have every day. You say it, halava, you say it every day, theoretically. Prat, klal, uprat, then you only have a prat or klal. If you only have a prat or klal, and these words we say in Rabbi Shmuel Omer, we just don't say the din. We say prat or klal, but what? No one even knows that it's a half a sentence. Then the rule is hakoil bechlal. Then we say that mayim v'chol mashke. And that's the Rabbi Eliezer. Let's read it inside now. Talmud Rabbi Eliezer, yeah. Since it says v'chol mashke, that's it. You see how small it is? Afilo may look inside the Marafulda, the second line under the Gemara. Afilo may pay this. Okay, so if it says v'chol mashke, like it sounds like it's so pashut. Shtetech v'chol mashke. Afilo may pay this. Even Jack Daniels, oichata mashke, sama movis, like what? Mashke. Oh, my Talmud the Rabbanon. The Rabbanon is Rabbi Yeshua. So he said, ishkoyach. Because after it says v'chol mashke, it says asher yishase. Look inside again. The Maraful, the 3 lines under the Gemara. Asher yishase. Now, how does he interpret the words asher yishase? We're going to see later, that what happens to liquids that are putrid. Mayim. I'll go to mayim. Do sea waters, are they machsher? The answer is yes. It's interesting. Unlike food, by food, if food is not edible, it does not, even if it was already tamei, it loses its tuma. Different rules. Liquids, no, it's asher yishasa, doesn't exclude mayim seruchim that are not drinkable. So the taich, I'm reading inside the Marav folder. Asher yishasa means liquids that are coming from peiros that were made to be turned into a liquid. What liquids come from a fruit that halachically, perhaps depending on time and place, it's important, are made in the Torah only oil and wine. That's the way the Chachamim, now only oil and wine won't mean only oil and wine. It's going to mean all of the 7 liquids. All of the 7 liquids. To make that clear. But that's just to understand the Marafulda. Asher yishase v'hani peiros. Ein oimdem laseis behem mashke l'shasiya. I'm just emphasizing this because what bracha do people make on orange juice today? They still make a shahakol. Some people argue you can make a ha'etz. Why? Because if you learn the Chazal, in other words, if it's a rule in the Torah, then it will never change. If it has to do with the universal accepted norm, this could change depending how people interact with these fruits. You can argue that in certain places, for people who live in Florida, the main purpose of oranges is orange juice. 95%. The Rabbi is saying 95%, imagine, of oranges are planted for their juice. And that you should know. Some halachic poskim say you make a ha'etz on it because of it. This asher yishasa means something that came from a fruit that was made into a liquid. That's the reason why it's here. And according to the here by the Tanoim, that means oil and wine. So Asher Yeshasa is limiting it. So now the Gemara says, Ma Rabbi Eliezer, hold on. Rabbi Eliezer, who just quotes the words V'chol Mashke, but we all know it's not so pashut. L'choyre, he follows Rabbi Shmuel. Which Rabbi Shmuel? The one that we spoke of. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel is the one that says, guys, listen to these words. Perato klal, you say this every morning. Now you have words that you never read in your life. I was so happy yesterday when I was preparing this. Hakoil b'chlal. Now you know the rule. And this rule, just to know in the Braisa, is like I mentioned, ki yitein ish l're'eyu, right? And the Torah is speaking about, by the din of Hashomer, the Torah says, chamoir, oy shoir, oy seh, v'chol behema. Make up your mind. So Rabbi Shmuel, that's a pratu klal. And the din is, and we know, no one argues with this, that even though the Torah specified 3 animals, since after the prat can mean various pratim, comes the klal, v'chol behema, all of the dinei hashoimrim, there is shomer chinam, but the dinim of hashoimrim apply to all animals equal. Hakoil b'chlal. That's the word. And over here, so the key is, that's the ikr, that we're going to Daf Kuf Amid Beis, prior to the Torah saying the words V'chol Mashke. I know the Torah said the word Mayim. That's what the Gemara means to say. You see how kitzirdik the Yerushalmi is? I know it says Mayim, but Mayim V'chol Mashke, that's the Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Eliezer is following Shitas Rabbi Shmuel, okay? Prat uklal, hakoil bechlal. Klal is kol mashke. Kol mashke means alts. Problem is, Asher Yeshasa means something. If you're going to learn it the way the Marafulda learned it in the Chachamim, if you want to learn it in another way, Gezun to hate, but still, Asher Yeshasa is limiting. Asher Yeshasa is v'chol mashke, that's drinkable. So that's l'chayr should be prat, klal prat. So now asks the Gemara that don't tell me that Rabbi Eliezer follows Rabbi Shmuel, because it's not going to work here. Because Rabbi Shmuel only says hakoil b'chlal when it's only a prat and a klal. L'Rabbi Shmuel, again, it's a given. Now, where does the Gemara know it from? Now we know that even though that in what we read every day, we read klal uprat uklal iyatodon elokei in prat. Rabbi Shmuel also said, and this is not a 14th midah, I understand this to be part of midah vav. Klal uprat uklal, in our Sidurim, I know this because in our Sidurim they give the numbers to know what are the 13. Yeah, we read for whatever reason klal uprat uklal I atodon elokei in prat. We should know that part of the midah vav is the opposite also. Prat uklal uprat I atodon elokei in prat. Elokei ein haprat. Listen to me. Halt kop, Shlomi. This is hard. It looks simple. Nothing of this is simple. So in other words, the problem is, the Gemara was trying to say, Rabbi Eliezer follows Rabbi Shmuel. The Gemara says, and Daf Kuf Amid Beis, no, that Rabbi Eliezer is saying more than Rabbi Shmuel. Veruba means he's going beyond. Why is that? Because Rabbi Eliezer, du Amar, afilu prat uklal v'chazar uprat, he's still saying hakoel b'chlal. Since you have the words mayim, prat. Simple. I know simple. You have to get used to it. Mayim is prat. V'chol mashke klal. Asher Yeshasa is limiting. Asher Yeshasa, not all mashke, only mashke, not Jack Daniels. You can't drink it. It limits. So if it limits, that's called a prat. According to Rabbi Shmuel, prat klal uprat I atodon elokei haprat. But what is Rabbi Eliezer saying in our Mishnah? Not Rab Nosson. Our understanding, Rabbeinu HaKadosh's understanding in Rabbi Eliezer, that all liquids are included in the dinam of Tuma. Why? Because is it because Rabbi Eliezer holds that prat klal uprat atodon ke'en klal? Okay, but then don't tell me Rabbi Shmuel, because this is beyond Rabbi Shmuel. That's the way the Gemara is saying it. So answers the Gemara, Rabbi Piri Goyri. From Kesarin, guys, we're learning Nu Amiroim. I don't remember Rabbi Piri Goyri. It's great. From Kesarin, says, no. Rabbi Eliezer only says like Rabbi Shmuel. He does not go beyond him. Why not? Because the words Asher Yeshasa, so you have to, it's not a prat. It's a whole different limud. You have to know how to put them together. It's so needed to tell you something else that you can't include it in this triad. So it's only prat uklal. Now, elakach meshiv Rabbi Eliezer lechachamim. Ma de islochoin asher yochel prat lo oichel seruach. Right? Let's go back to what we learned before. You can whoever is on Kuf Amid Beis, you have again the Torah Rashalam. Mikol ha'oichel asher yochel. Guys, why did the Torah have to say all foods that are eaten? What is that coming to exclude? So the fact that's coming to exclude that foods that are no longer edible are not included in the dinim of Tumah. Both that if it's no longer edible, it cannot acquire Tumah, and even more, even if it already became Tameh. If now it became Suruach, it became spoiled, we're not talking about like for Pesach, even a dog won't eat it. No, we're speaking about a human being won't eat it. Once it's Suruach, even if it was already Tameh, it loses its Tumah. Why? Because it's not food. Just like, says this Rabbi Pirigoidi, that the words Asher Ya'achal is teaching you that the dinim of Tumah does not include oichel seruach. We exclude food that's spoiled. Kach isli. I will also learn that asher yishasa is needed to tell you prat lamashka seruach, and that's a needed limud. Without the words asher yishasa, you wouldn't have known it. The question is, why not? You wouldn't have known it. You need to tell you the din that mashkin seruach is not included in the dinim of Tumah. Guys, this statement is going to be challenged. I want to tell you right now that mashkin is not like oichel, like I mentioned, but the mayim of the yam is part of the dinim of it's machsher. I want you to know that. Let's think about dam nida, zera adam. It's seruach. The Torah calls it tipa serucha. The Mishnah calls it tipa serucha. It's tameh on the level of av. So it's not so simple, the statement. So that's tomorrow. But let's go right now. So since, let me just finish the sentence. Since Asher Yishasa is needed to tell you the rule that liquids that are spoiled are no longer included in the dinim of Tumah, so you don't even include it in the triad. Asher Yishasa is separate. All you have in the pasuk is Mayim v'chol mashke. Prat uklal. The rule is hakoil bechlal. So says Rabbi Yishmael somewhere. Now we know. Rabbi Eliezer follows Rabbi Yishmael. V'chol mashke is the dominant. All liquids are included in the dinim of becoming tameh, not machsher. This pasuk is not speaking about hachsharas oichlin. This pasuk is speaking about a sheretz that fell into a klei cheretz that has mashkin in it, which is great. Kevin, you wanted to ask something.
It was not suruach initially. It was not disgusting or spoiled to begin with.
You're saying very good. Let's hold that because there's a lot about this soon. Even today and a lot more tomorrow. Hold that. But so far we have this rule that Asher Yishasa is excluding mashkin that are suruch. Now let's go further. What's amazing, guys, it could be that this Rabbi Perigoidi, could be he was a Tana. I don't know. Because he's basically saying, or he has a Messiah, he has a tradition of a whole back and forth between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. In other words, that's we got it right. It's amazing that the Amoraim, prior to knowing they got it right. The machlokes is whether it's a prat klal uprat or whether it's just a prat uklal. That's the machlokes. What does it depend on? Whether Asher Yishas is needed for something else. Rabbi Eliezer says yes. And for that, Amruloi, the Chachamim, I know we have it as Rabbi Yeshua, but we know already from today. It's all the Chachamim, they told Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol Bechlal stood by himself. Loi doimen oichlin amashkin. No. Loi, im omart ba'oichalin. We're going to give two areas in which we're going to have a leniency by foods. By food, shekain oichal seruach me'ikarei tahor. Something, Kevin, exactly what you said. Food that was spoiled from the outset can never become tameh. Even if you're going to interpret Asher Yeshasa, that if liquids that were first drinkable now became spoiled, they lose their tumah. I just want you to know that mashkin that are from the outset saruach, they are not excluded from the dinim of tumah. Toimar b'mashkin shekein mashke saruach me'ikaroi, like damnida, like zera, like the waters of the sea, that that they are tamei. They are included in the dinim of Tumah. We'll see that tomorrow. So first of all,
You're
stating a fact that Asher Yishasa doesn't exclude Mashka Seruach. That's one way of learning it. Does not exclude. Mashka Seruach is not excluded. Now this would have been enough of their challenge. And therefore, if Asher Yishasa is not excluding Mashkin Seruchin from the dinim of Tumah, then it's a prat. Then you have a prat, klalu prat, I atodon elikein haprat. Davar acher, another challenge against Rabbi Eliezer. Now this second challenge will be knocked down, and then we'll replace it with a third that will become the new second. Davar acher, loi, no, nicht gut gesagt. Im amart boi cholin, shekein oi cholin, hamiyuchadim lo adam ein tzrichen machshava. Guys, this is a big rule. Again, in which we have the following rule. If a food is universally eaten as food, if something that grows, that is by most people used as a food. No one needed to have machshava, intent, kavana, whichever word you want to use, that someone will be eating this for it to become susceptible to becoming tamei. There's no such a rule. If something is objectively classified as food because universally this is consumed by people, it's already by default ready to become tamei. Now don't confuse this. I know that every food has to become muksha. That's a separate din. I'm not talking about the din of it had to become wet, b'ritzoin haba'olim with the sheva mashkin. Forget about that. Who classified it as food? Who said it's food? You don't need to have someone intending to use it as food. Do you know that by all of the liquids, someone needed to have that intention? However, Taimer b'mashkin, we're learning new dinim. Shekei mashkin hamiyuchadim la'adam, even liquids that are universally consumed, there has to be intent for someone to consume it, for it to be in the status of mashkin. So let me give an example. Let's speak about oil, because oil, according to everyone, is machshir. It's one of the 7 liquids. It acquires tumah, it imparts tumah. Now, if oil was pressed, that act of pressing it isn't only kavana, it's a maisa that has sublated in it kavana. Why are you pressing it? Because you want to use it. I'm speaking about juices that ooze out of a fruit on their own. There is a din by mashkin, and this is true by wine, that means by grape juice, by oil, and by everything, that even though that which oozed out is just as liquid oil as if it was squeezed out, since no one did it, someone at least has to have kavana on that. Someone is going to consume it. And prior to having that kavana, it's never going to become tamei. According to everyone. Now, which makes foods more, which makes foods more chamur than liquids.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
Yes, 1 second. We go over here. No, why are you comparing just like it says asher yachel? You're saying the same interpretation has to be by mashkin. Mashkin and oichlin don't follow they don't follow the same rules. They don't follow the same rules. Don't compare one to the other. Hold your question. We have a minute. I want to go because we're mamash in the middle of it. So the Gemara says, what you're saying makes absolutely no sense. You're saying that mashkin is more chomer. You're saying that mashkin is more lenient. Mashkin is more lenient. That if you didn't have machshava on mashkin, it will never become tamei. So it's more lenient. If it's more lenient, then it should for sure not become tamei if it's spoiled. So you're right, it's not the same, but it's not the same in the direction that I will interpret asher yishasa to exclude mashkin seruchen. That's daf kuf aleph. So says the Gemara, since you're saying that for mashkin to become tamei, it's harder. Mashkin is more lenient. We exclude them more. So then vada yehi mashke seruach meikare tamei. You're saying the opposite? You're saying since it's more lenient, that without machshava it does not become tamei, so therefore you want to tell me that asher yeshasa does not exclude mashkin seruchen? No. Hoyel behem tzerichen machshava yemashke seruach mei karitor. Now, by the way, we're not negating the first challenge. We're just saying the second differentiation is not logical to be used to contradict the Asher Yeshasa. That should actually back up the Asher Yeshasa. So, the Gemara wants to give two refutations. So, David Acher Amrullah, what was the second thing? That was his Mesoiram. That the Chachamim challenged Rabbi Eliezer. Im amarta beichalin, shkein oichle behemel adam einam boim machshava. It's amazing that if you have food that's designated for animals, even if you have machshava, for some person that needs a refuah shalema who wants to eat his dog food, it won't help. It won't be classified as oichel. No, it's machshava cannot upgrade oichle behema to oichle adam. Cannot. By mashkin, we are more machmir. By mashkin, even mashkin that's by default designated for animals, if there was a machshava that a human is going to drink it, so you had water. Many people say that water, when it falls in nature, it's not that when it falls on the ground, that's for behema. Because people don't eat it. It's muddy, it's dirty. But if someone says, I'm going to drink it, that machshava renders that water into humanly consumed water, and now it's susceptible to becoming tummy. So now that's a chumrah by mashkin. Since you are able to transform mashke behema, Jack Daniels, not even a behema will have it. I'll go back to my mayim. That mayim on the ground is for behema, but your machshava. So since mashkin are more closer to tuma, so then there's a logic to say that mashkin seruchen will also be tummy. So mashkin is a chumrah. The bottom line is, yes, bottom line is that the Chachamim are of the opinion that mashkin seruchim are included in the dinam of Tuma. Therefore, according to the Chachamim, Rabbi Yeshua, Asher Yishasa is not excluding a new limud of mashkin seruchim. It's not excluding it. Therefore, the Asher Yishasa becomes a prat. Klal upratu klal. Beautiful. I atodan ela ke'ena prat. That's Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer argues. Rabbi Eliezer holds Asher Yishasa does exclude mashkin seruchim. We're going to have to see whether he agrees with what according to him mashkin seruchim is not tamei. What dam nida we know dam the zera, all these things. We'll get to that. So that's why it's not a prat, and therefore klal prat uklal hakoil b'klal gavaldik. I love it. Danny's dancing from joy over here. Michael, you had a question.
Yes, if the liquid that is not designated for human use and it becomes tamei somehow, but then afterwards it becomes designated for human use, is it still pure?
I missed that, and we're late. So Michael, put the question on the WhatsApp and I'll answer you.
Thank you.